Good morning. My name is Jessie Bond. I am the city manager for the city of Mercer Island, and this recording is being prepared on June 22nd, 2022. Give me just a moment. I'm going to share my PowerPoint slide deck. As I mentioned, this recording is being prepared on June 22nd, 2022. It's an abbreviated presentation following a full presentation that was provided last night, June 21st, to the City Council. This abbreviated presentation specifically covers option 1 of the Parks Levy Renewal discussion, which relates to playground replacements. All right. So as I mentioned, the City Council received a presentation on the 2022 Parks Levy Renewal at the City Council meeting on June 21st. Staff did not have an opportunity to present all of the background slides on Levy Renewal Option number 1, which specifically relates to capital funding for playground replacements. This was just due to the length of the PowerPoint slide deck and other meeting constraints. So this presentation is being recorded on June 22nd after the meeting, and it's being recorded just to ensure that all of the background information with the accompanying staff narrative is available to the community and the City Council, particularly ahead of any final decisions being made on the Parks Levy Renewal Ordinance, which is currently set to go to the Council in July for approval. I will mention that links to the City Council agenda materials from the June 21st, 2022 City Council meeting and additional background information on the Parks Levy Renewal are available on the city's Let's Talk page, and the link to that Let's Talk page is shown on the bottom of this slide. As I'm talking today, I'm going to do my best to move around my video box, but as you can see, it is partially blocking some of the text, so I'll make adjustments as we go. Okay, for context, at the June 21st City Council meeting, the staff were seeking direction from the City Council specifically to place the Parks Levy Renewal on the November 8th, 2022 ballot. This is a full year ahead of the expiration of the current Parks Levy. One of the changes that we made from the June 7th, 2022 presentation to the June 21st presentation was to change the Parks Levy length to 16 years. There were a number of reasons this was done, but just for the sake of this discussion, it did impact the playground calculations, and I'll get to that in just a moment. So everything that you're about to see is based on a proposed Parks Levy length of 16 years. And finally, should the levy pass in November, City Council will take action to end the current Parks Levy 1 year early. So that's a broad context for the presentation that was provided June 21st. The Parks Levy Renewal discussion on June 21st really covered 3 main categories. One is the base Parks Levy, which proposes to maintain the Parks Levy amounts and the levy categories from 2022 to 2023. So essentially continuing to do what we've already been doing with the Parks Levy. The 2023 proposed base levy amount is very specifically $989,923 and includes a 1% annual increase from 2022. So again, part 1 of the levy discussion was proposing the base Parks Levy Renewal. There were 2 other options discussed on June 21st. One was option 1, which is additional capital funding for ongoing playground replacements. And that's what I'm going to cover in more detail here today as part of this recording. And then option 2, which proposed to increase the annual capital funding for Pioneer Park. And that is to fund restoration projects identified in the Pioneer Park Forest Management Plan. I'm not going into detail on option 2 during this recording, but we did record a separate video earlier today, June 22nd, that also captured all of the background slides on option 2. So let's go into a little bit more detail on the option 1 playground replacements. And again, we're preparing this video because we didn't have the time at the June 21st City Council meeting to go through all of the background sides. So first up, just a little context and information about the playground structures on Mercer Island and really all playground structures. The play equipment typically has a useful service life of 15 to 20 years. Sometimes we can get more than that, and sometimes, unfortunately, we get a little bit less than that. It really depends on the condition of the equipment, where, types of use, which can be a wide variety. Our maintenance, which, by the way, we have a pretty robust maintenance program, and other factors that we don't control. Things like tree limbs falling on equipment, those types of things, which did happen not too long ago at Deane's Children's Park. So all of that comes into play when we are looking at replacement for playground structures and life cycle. So knowing that about Mercer Island playgrounds, what I will share is over the 16-year life of a levy, all of the Mercer Island playground structures, except for Mercerdale Park and the dragon, the concrete dragon at Deane's Children's Park, will need to be replaced. So over the next 16 years, that means a total of 15 playground structures will need to be replaced. As we were preparing the materials and the recommendations for the Parks Levy Renewal, we looked at a number of sources to prepare our recommendation. First of all, we looked at the 2023-2028 Parks Capital Improvement Plan, which is adopted earlier in 2022. That's the 6-year plan that lays out all of the capital construction projects in parks over the next 6 years. That plan identified 5 playground structures for replacement: Deane's Children's Park, Aubrey Davis Park, Lid B, Secret Park, Roanoke Park, and First Hill Park. Also, I'm going to skip to the last bullet on this page. We have a couple other documents that we can refer to. One of them is the 20-year Parks Capital Facilities Plan. This is a document that looks out over the 20-year horizon and identifies all of the potential capital projects in the park system. That plan identified a number of other playgrounds that will need to be replaced over the next 16 years. Something else I want to point out as we talk about playground replacements is we recently adopted a new Parks, Recreation, and Open Space Plan, which is the strategic plan that guides decisions around parks and recreations, operations, and services for the next 6 years. One of the things that was called out in that plan is that most Mercer Island playgrounds do not meet ADA or universal accessibility standards. And so as we contemplate the 15 playground structures that will need to be replaced in the next 16 years, we need to evaluate them for ADA upgrades. Not all of our playground structures will be good candidates for ADA improvements, but we do want to look for those opportunities where we have a friendly ADA grade, we can get nearby ADA parking, and we have good access to and from, and often support facilities as well. So that's a little context on how this recommendation came together. As I've already mentioned, this is option 1 to potentially add to the base parks levy that the council considered on June 21st. So let's talk a little bit more about that 16-year playground replacement schedule. This is a list, and I know it's a little difficult to see on this slide, but it represents all 18 of the Mercer Island playground structures, and that table shows the next 16 years, which again ties to that anticipated length of the parks levy. I will mention that at the council meeting on June 21st, I recognize we screen shared an older version of this document. So the note below just indicates that this slide was updated with the correct exhibit. This is exhibit 2 of AB6105. So that's where you'll find it. So what you're looking at here, again, is a list of all 18 playground structures in the Mercer Island Park system. You'll note that, and I'll show my cursor here, each playground has shows a 2-year replacement cycle. The first year in blue is typically when we're doing the public engagement. We're reaching out to the community, getting information about hopes, dreams, and wishes for the playground replacement. We're doing our design. There usually is some level of design required for playground replacements, and we're processing permitting, if any, is needed for the replacement of the structure. The box in the green indicates the construction year. So for this one, number 6, First Hill Park Playground, it anticipates a 2025 engagement, design, and permitting phase, followed by 2026 construction. You'll note also in this table, the year installed was 2007 for the First Hill Park Playground, and the estimated replacement year is 2026. We've included the estimated replacement costs as well. What I want to mention about the costs, and you'll see this asterisk on the following slides as well, is that we estimated all of the playground replacement costs in 2021 when we did the update to the Parks, Recreation, and Open Space Plan. We've inflated them using a 3%, inflated those cost estimates using a 3% annual inflation factor to get to the costs that you see in this table, which ties back to the year that the structure is anticipated for replacement. One of the great things about this 16-year replacement schedule is that we anticipate replacing at least one playground structure every biennium. The exception is 2031 to 2032. And the reason is that sitting out here in I'll move my video box here, in 2033 is the replacement of all of the playground structures for Luther Burbank Park. The cost estimate right now for that replacement is $1.7 million. So what we would do is likely accumulate savings from the Parks Levy playground replacement category over a couple of biennia, including 31 and 32, to help fund that really extensive and major replacement cost. We also endeavored to combine playground replacement, structure replacements at park sites. So here's an example. Roanoke Park has 2 playground structures that were replaced at different times. We're recommending they both be replaced in 2024, even though one may not be quite due for replacement. And that's because we don't want to disrupt playground sites multiple times for construction closures. And aligning these playground replacements over time will hopefully get that park site on a schedule going forward. The final note I want to make is at this point, this is a plan. This is based on the best information we have about the condition of the equipment today, where we think we can extend the life of equipment or where we may need to replace sooner than that 20-year estimated life cycle. But we also anticipate that changes will happen, right? Playground equipment may, break down sooner than we anticipate, or perhaps also have a longer life than we anticipated. So if this funding is included in the Parks Levy, and if the levy is successful, I think it's just important to note that future staff and City Council will be making decisions on playground replacement projects as they're coming up and as they occur. And we should anticipate that some schedule adjustments will happen based on all that information I just shared with you. So here's what the recommendation categories look like. And I'll highlight this number here at the bottom of the screen. The total estimated cost of all of those playground replacements, and again, we're talking about 15 playground structures, is estimated at a little over $7 million over the next 16 years. What we shared with the City Council were 4 potential funding levels to increase, to add to or increase the base Parks Levy to support the cost of replacing all of these playground structures. The options presented to the council ranged from option 1A, which was funding about 25% of the estimated playground replacement costs over the life of the Parks Levy. This would put the 2023 Parks Levy amount at just over $100,000, all the way to option 1D, which is funding 100% of the annual costs of playground replacements over the life of the levy. That would start us out at around $400,000 in 2023. Again, these numbers, if you happen to watch the June 7th, 2022 council presentation, these numbers were adjusted And it was to factor in the change from a 15-year Parks levy to a 16-year Parks levy. All right, let's go to the next slide. So this was actually the part of the presentation that we did not deliver at the council meeting on June 21st. It's the detailed walkthrough of all of the playgrounds, the opportunities, and what we would anticipate today for the replacement. So let's start with Aubrey Davis Park Lid A. This playground structure was installed in 2011. If you're familiar with Aubrey Davis Park, this playground is located just immediately adjacent to the picnic shelter and Ferroglia Fields. Our replacement schedule calls for the structure to be replaced in 2030. The estimated replacement costs, and one thing I wanted to point out is you'll see is these numbers are very specific. We took a rounded number to the nearest 1,000, and as I've already mentioned, we inflated it using a 3% inflation factor to get to the 2030 replacement cost. And so we ended up with numbers that are no longer rounded. Considerations, I've already mentioned that we'll be evaluating all of our playground replacements and looking for opportunities to upgrade for ADA access and universally accessible play types. This probably isn't the best candidate for that type of upgrade, just due to lack of immediate nearby ADA parking. This one also, the restroom is across the field. We also know that Aubrey Davis Park Lid B Playground, which is not too far away from this one, will be a candidate and likely improved to include ADA accessibility, accommodations, and play structures. So that's something that we need to factor is geographically, this one's probably not the best fit, but we will be looking at the Lid B Playground. Also important to note that we want to diversify our playground types, you know, the structures, the style of play, so that the Mercer Island playground system has something unique to offer for everyone. In fact, just a moment, I'm going to go back to this slide really quick because I remembered I forgot to call something out. As you look at this column here, which was the year all of the playgrounds were installed, you'll notice that a number of our playgrounds were installed in 2012. We have one here, here, and 13, right? So that was a pretty significant investment we made in installing playgrounds, you know, kind of replacing the playground equipment all at once. So in developing the 16-year project schedule, one of the things we are trying to do is spread those playground replacements out again. So that's one of the goals. One of the other things that tends to happen is when you do all those playgrounds at once, the equipment can look pretty similar. So as we go forward, we want to diversify the look, the feel, the play type of all that equipment. All right, so back to this slide now. So that's Aubrey Davis Park Lid A playground replacement. And again, I'll just remind you, this list was alphabetized, so they're not in any particular order. All right, moving on. I already previewed this one a little bit. This is Aubrey Davis Park Lid B Playground. This is right off of North Mercer Way. This equipment was installed in 2007. Our estimated replacement is 2027, and the estimated replacement cost is a little over $600,000. We're estimating higher replacement costs for this piece of equipment because this park site is a great candidate for ADA upgrades and universal play features. And this playground replacement project will likely be included as part of a larger parks capital project in this part of Aubrey Davis Park. Will likely include new ADA parking stalls on North Mercer Way, potentially a new restroom building nearby, which will support the fields and certainly all of the trail users that are active in this part of the park. This one also may be a contender for grant funding because it's likely to include an ADA upgrade. There may, at the time that we start working on planning and designing this playground, we may be able to compete for grant funding for this project. In general, through the Washington State Recreation and Conservation Office, there are a lot of playground replacement projects happening all the time across the state. These types of projects don't always compete well for grant funding, except when they involve ADA upgrades and universal play components. So that's something that we will look at for all of our projects, but this one may actually be a stronger contender. All right, so that's Aubrey Davis Park Lid B. Number 3 on our list, again, just going in alphabetical order, is the Castle Playground at Deane's Children's Park, which is part of the broader Island Crest Park system. It's located just south of Mid-Island. It's one of our larger playgrounds. There's multiple play structures at Deane's, so all told, it's one of our larger playground systems on Mercer Island. This equipment was installed in 2005, and the estimated replacement is actually coming up in 2023. Replacement costs are $267,000. One of the things we'll be looking at, and I don't want to get ahead of the Parks and Recreation Commission work or final direction from the City Council, but we are considering relocating the bike skills area just, let's see, north of the Deane's Children's Playground. So one of the things that we would identify or desire to do is to align the construction of the bike skills area with the replacement of this playground piece so that we're doing the work all at the same time. There's likely some common improvements that will need to be made to support both amenities, things like, trails and accessibility. Also worth mentioning that Deane's Park, the playground area, is a pretty good candidate to upgrade some of the playground structures to meet ADA accessibility requirements. So the castle structure will certainly be evaluated for those types of improvements before it's replaced. Also a note, and I've already mentioned that this is one of our largest playgrounds on Mercer Island. It includes a wide variety of play structures and play types. So as we replace equipment, we want to be mindful of continuing to diversify play, making sure there's something age appropriate for the little guys and the older ones, and certainly continuing the traditions that are so valued and important to us at Deane's. Also at Deane's is the famous Dragon. My kids refer to this park as Dragon Park. I don't think they actually know the real name. In an earlier presentation in June to the council, we had mistakenly identified this play structure as being a candidate for replacement during the next 16 years. That's not correct. The Dragon was replaced in 2018. It's a concrete structure. Our estimate is that the structure probably has about a 30-year life. So it would next be up for replacement in 2048. Certainly we'll continue to evaluate the structure. We may be able to extend the life beyond that, but currently it's not proposed to be replaced during the life of the levy. That would be a replacement considered for a future levy or another time. All right, also at Deane's Children's Park is what we call, not very original, but the platform playground, which is distinct and different from the castle play structure. It was installed in 2012. This piece of equipment is actually aging really well. It's one of our newer pieces of playground equipment, and we do anticipate that if things continue on the trend they're indicating right now, this play structure may not be need to be replaced until 2037. The estimated replacement cost for this structure is $1.1 million. Again, we're out into the end of the levy period. Part of the reason for that cost. It's also a really big structure. This also, because it's at Deane's Children's Park, where we have accessible parking and relatively level grades, and we'll have at some point nice ADA accessible paths. This is a candidate also to be evaluated for an ADA upgrade or universal play features. And I think we'll be looking at the playground as a whole as we start to replace playground pieces, just to ensure that, again, diversity of play types, all ages, all abilities are served at this playground. All right, jumping back to one of our north parks. This is First Hill Park Playground. This playground equipment was installed in 2007. And perhaps of all the playground structures in our system, this is the one that's not aging quite as well. So we anticipate needing to accelerate the replacement just a little bit ahead of that 20-year life. The current replacement is anticipated for 2026. The replacement cost is estimated at just a little over $400,000. We do anticipate that the playground structure and that sports court, the playground structure will be replaced and the sports court likely resurfaced as part of this project. This is an important neighborhood park. It doesn't have any formal parking, although sometimes people park casually here. So we'll need to evaluate whether or not this is a good candidate for an ADA upgrade. It would require formalizing ADA parking adjacent to this playground. I've already mentioned that nearby, not quite walking distance, but also on the north end of Island is Aubrey Davis Lid Park B, which is anticipated to be upgraded to a universal play structure. So these are all things that we'll need to look at as we get closer to 2026 and anticipate the replacement of this equipment. Moving on, and again, we're just going alphabetical here. This is Groveland Beach Park, and the playground at that park facility was installed in 2012. This is another piece of equipment that's aging pretty well right now. We anticipate being able to go just a little bit longer than 20 years with a replacement in 2036. The replacement cost is around $500,000 in 2036. This park has really challenging topography and grades. We would not recommend considering this playground structure for ADA upgrades. But again, that's a decision that's a ways out, so we will take a look again. The rest of the parks, primarily the waterfront component, is not ADA accessible, and it would not be feasible to make those upgrades. Homestead Park Playground, mostly a good news story here as well. This play structure was installed in 2012 with an estimated replacement of 2034. It actually includes two play pieces. That image you see there on the top, it's a treehouse play structure, and then that image below is a smaller play structure that's immediately adjacent to the treehouse. The estimated replacement cost for both of those structures is around $500,000. You know, we've been on the fence a little bit about this playground and this park in terms of ADA accessibility upgrades. There is some topography from the parking lot down to the tennis courts, the restroom, and the playground, and then further down to the athletic fields. So it's something that we will definitely be taking a look at, how we might improve accessibility to these parks features. And that would certainly be evaluated before these playground structures are upgraded. One thing I want to point out about Homestead, and it's also applicable to the South Mercer playfields, is right next door, literally, is West Mercer Elementary School, which has a large playground structure. And while the elementary school isn't accessible during school hours, it is available generally for community use after hours, so evenings, weekends, on breaks. We will want to be mindful when we replace this structure that it's something different than what's available on the West Mercer Elementary School playground. If I didn't mention this already, I do want to say this play structure is aging well. It's also one of the more challenging play structures we have. It's one of our taller play structures. So it's really attractive to the older kids, and that's something that we'll want to be thinking about across the park system. I've mentioned it a couple times now that we have diversity of play types for all ages and abilities. And this one in particular, as I already noted, is one of our taller structures. Okay, moving on, the next 3 slides here are specific to the Luther Burbank park playground structures. And we actually break the playgrounds up into 3 distinct categories. So number 9 here is that fire engine and spring toys structure. This playground is located near the swim beach at Luther Burbank Park. It is not the main playground structure. It was installed in 2014, and we're recommending a replacement date of 2033. It's just a year earlier than anticipated. That's primarily because we're trying to align the replacement of this structure with the replacement of the main playground structure. That cost estimate you see there of $1.7 million is for the replacement of all of the playground structures at Luther Burbank Park. Luther Burbank Park is one of our largest parks, certainly one of our flagship parks on Mercer Island, has one of the largest playground structures also available in our system. And as we're gradually working through a variety of capital improvements, we are addressing ADA accessibility at this park. Coming up in the 23-24 biennium is the replacement and upgrade of the Luther Burbank docks and improvements to the swimming beach area, which will include ADA accessibility improvements. And so as we look to replace this playground equipment, we want to make sure that these structures are also accessible and include a variety of universal play features going forward. All right, let's take a look then at the other playgrounds at Luther Burbank. This is the main playground structure, and it includes the zip line. Don't have hard data to prove this, but my hunch is this is probably the highest used playground in the Mercer Island Park system, or certainly close to it. It was installed in 2013. It is a very unique play type, different than all of the other playgrounds in our system. We are estimating a replacement date of 2033. You know, the equipment is holding up well, but as I already noted, this is a very high use park. So we don't anticipate being able to go much beyond 20 years with the next replacement. The cost is again combined all of the playground structure replacements into one at $1.7 million. You know, something I'll point out about this play structure, particularly that top photo, is the surfacing you see there is a poured in place type of surfacing, which is the type of surfacing we use when we're building playgrounds to accommodate universal play and accessibility. Interestingly though, looking closely at many of these features, the playground structures themselves are not accessible. So going forward, we'll want to do a better job of providing both types of play equipment so that play is available for, again, all ages, all types. All right, one more on Luther Burbank Park here. This is a separate play structure, but it's immediately adjacent to the main Luther Burbank Park playground. These are the swings and the spring toys that you can see in the photos there. Again, installed 2013, anticipated replacement 2033. This will be a good candidate for an accessible swing set or swing experience or some other type of experience at this site. All those decisions I want to just mention as we're starting to contemplate now what might go here. All of these design decisions at all of our playgrounds, really important to mention, will involve a community engagement process, similar to what occurred recently for the Mercerdale Park playground replacement. So more to come. Most of what I'm sharing is just some ideas and kind of initial thoughts on how we might choose to replace the playgrounds in the future. Speaking of, and that was perhaps a good segue, Mercerdale Park Playground. These pictures are fairly recent, just taken on June 21st, 2022, likely days away from the official playground opening. I included these slides here just to mention that this playground was just replaced and is almost open, so replaced in 2022. We do not estimate needing to replace this structure again until 2042, possibly if the equipment holds. It is brand new equipment, maybe even a little bit beyond that. Also a moment of near celebration after what has been probably one of the most trying capital projects in recent history due to weather and supply chain issues. This playground is really close to opening. It looks fantastic. It's a fully accessible universal play style playground and the first one in our system. So if you want to get a sense of what universal play means and looks like, and all the different opportunities available. We just encourage you to get out and visit this playground as soon as it's open. And I'm sure we'll be announcing an opening date just shortly after I recorded this presentation. I guess I should have mentioned too, in terms of playground structures, and on our list, we actually count this main playground and the train, which you can see in that slide, as two separate structures. For right now, we're both estimating both will be on a 20-year replacement cycle. We may get a little more life out of that train. We'll just have to see. It's a pretty high use playground. All right, moving on to playground number 14. This is the playground that's right behind and kind of adjacent to the Mercer Island Community and Event Center. It was installed in 2010. It's one of our smaller playgrounds and really candidly, one of our lower use play structures. Its estimated replacement is right in 2030 with an estimated cost of just shy of $250,000. Some things we'll need to consider as we evaluate replacing this equipment. First of all is, how does this play equipment support the programming that's happening at the community center? And also, just behind the community center is an annex building that is leased to 2 preschools. And so again, we'll want to talk about the type of equipment, age, appropriateness, and what would be most beneficial at this site when we get to the replacement discussion. Finally, I want to mention that the community center itself is an ADA accessible facility. We will want to explore making improvements to this site. Again, this is probably one of the locations in the system where we should have universal play types to support all of the types of programs that we offer at the community center and also that are offered in the annex facility behind the community center. All right, Roanoke Park, I talked about this one just a little bit in the earlier presentation. There are 2 structures, actually technically 3 at Roanoke Park. The boat that you see in that upper picture, that was installed in 2004. And then in 2012, the swings and the tsunami were installed, and they took the place of a playground equipment that was failing. That's how we ended up with different replacement dates. That's not really ideal in our world to have structures that are replaced on different cycles. And so one of the goals of developing the 16-year playground replacement plan is to align all of the equipment replacement at each park in the same year. So we do anticipate replacing all of this equipment in 2024 at Roanoke Park. One of the questions we often get is, can you reuse playground equipment? The answer is maybe. Playground equipment takes a lot of beating regardless of the age. So those swings and that tsunami will likely come out in 2024, and we will evaluate if it's equipment we can reuse, if it can be donated or surplus, and we'll make that decision in the next biennium. In the meantime, the grade here at this site is pretty friendly to make ADA accessibility improvements. There is parking at this site. We need to make sure we have a site dedicated for ADA access. But I will also mention Levy Playground, which is just nearby up the road, is intended to be replaced with the ADA accessible universal play structure, probably with a similar approach to what we did at Mercerdale. So we'll need to be evaluating both playgrounds and making sure we have complementary play styles. Again, the structures can address a range of needs, and those decisions certainly will be made through the support of a community engagement process as we get closer to this replacement date. All right, Secret Park Playground, also another North End playground. You'll notice that many of our playgrounds are located north on the island. This is a bigger structure than possibly meets the eye. It's a playground structure plus swings and spin toys. It was installed in 2007. The estimated replacement is around 2028. We likely can get another year or 2 out of this structure, which is why we've proposed the replacement at 21 years. This site is not likely a good candidate for an ADA accessibility upgrade. There's no parking here. There is some topography challenges that would need to be overcome through improved paths and trails. But again, right now, this is not one that the staff would recommend for consideration. And we'll be making that final assessment and recommendation as we get closer to the 2028 replacement date. All right, rounding out the list here, this is our furthest south playground in the Mercer Island Park system. This is the play structure at South Mercer Playfields. It's our newest playground with the exception of Mercerdale. It was installed in 2018. The estimated replacement is 2038, and the replacement cost comes in just below $300,000. One thing to consider, this is a smaller footprint, if you will. It was a completely different play type, new to the park system, Mercer Island Park system. We did get some feedback that perhaps the features weren't challenging enough for older kids. So something to be evaluate when this playground is replaced, just to ensure maybe we do a better job spreading it across all ages. Something else very similar to Homestead Park. This park is right across the street from Lake Ridge Elementary School, which has a large playground structure that again is, often used by the community and, during non-school hours. So we want to make sure that the future playground replacement here provides something different and unique so that geographically we have a number of play types available to our community. South Mercer playfields are just relatively flat. We have nearby accessible parking and a playground facility, which makes this playground a really good candidate to offer some universal play features. Again, something to be evaluated once we get to the replacement of this playground, which by the way, anchors that 16-year playground replacement plan. So this playground is not anticipated to be replaced until 2038, which is the last year of that 16-year Parks levy. Well, that concludes my detailed walkthrough of each of the playground structures. And again, that was information that we didn't have time to share at the June 21st, 2022 City Council meeting in great detail. This is why we're preparing this additional video presentation. We feel it's important that the community and the City Council has this information ahead of the council making any final decisions on the ballot measure. To summarize, all of those playground replacements, there are 15 structures anticipated to be replaced over the life of the 16-year levy. And we presented the council with a range of funding options from funding 25% of those playground replacement costs to funding 100% of the playground replacement costs. I will also conclude by sharing that at the June 21st, 2022 City Council meeting, the City Council did direct the staff to include option 1D, that's fully funding the playground replacement costs in the Parks Levy Renewal Ordinance, and that's in preparation for a November 8th, 2022 special election. We are preparing that ordinance now, and the first reading of the Parks Levy Ordinance is scheduled for July 5th, and the second reading and adoption of the ordinance is scheduled for July 19th. As I noted at the very beginning of this presentation, all of this information, including links to the agenda materials from the June 21st meeting and background information on the Parks Levy renewal process, is available on the city's Let's Talk page. And we have the link provided there at the bottom of the screen. Thank you very much for listening to the presentation. I hope that provided some additional information on the playground replacements and what we know today and our anticipated replacement schedule.